Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Ethan and Jenna Show. I'm your host, Ethan, and alongside me is Jenna Belk.
Hello.
How's it going?
Pretty good. I apologize for the echo and the AC in the background. I'm not at home. I am at an Airbnb on vacation. So
It actually looks pretty good.
good.
So yeah, you're good to go. You sound great and look awesome.
Yeah, thanks. You too.
Where are you on vacation at?
We're at the coast. We like to go wade fishing, and we like to play in the water. But it's a good place to socially distance and get away from everybody.
What's the weather like over there?
Perfect, like 75. Yeah, it's nice. I hear it's snowing some places. Is it where snow?
Yeah, it's we haven't gotten snow yet, but it is getting cold.
Oh.
I've been wearing my pajama pants again and turning the heat up, and I'm like, no, I just really want summer back more than anything.
Well, a cold front actually hit Austin right before we left town, like the day before we left town. So we actually we're beating it right now.
Yeah, I would love to move to Austin or anywhere where it's warmer because Chicago weather really sucks.
I believe you. I hear it's windy, and that stopped. Like that's enough. I don't do wind.
No, screw wind. By the way, I do have, to the moderators in the audience, I do have Nightbot set up with commands.
Yay.
Hopefully they start working. Anyways, tonight our topic: mental health and politics, and it is a trying time right now. It can be difficult to stay civil when people are spewing so much hate. Like you put on Facebook or any social media and people are just tearing each other apart. They're not communicating like they should be or taking the time to understand why the opposition, although I hate to say opposition, let's just say why the other person feels so differently than you do. And I think it's important that we do our best to understand why people have opposing views. I did that. I had to force myself when I was a conservative to start watching liberal news because I had thought, like, okay, look, half the country disagrees with me. It's not a small percentage, it's a large chunk. I need to find out why. And then before I knew it, I became more liberal. And I think it's important that everybody does that.
I was reminding myself of that this morning. That's actually why, like I told you earlier, I was watching Fox News this morning. It was because I had reminded myself that I'd kind of been talking to people I agreed with a lot, other than on my shows and things. And so just thought I'd check in with the other side. And I was actually impressed. Fox News actually wasn't as bad as I remembered it being. It wasn't as biased. They talked about fake news, and they interviewed a guy who wrote How to Skeptic, I think, or how to be a skeptic or something. No, it's called Fake News, something like that. And they were talking about how to be skeptics and how to learn how to teach yourself how to think and not what to think.
Right.
It seemed non-biased from what I saw, which granted I only caught about an hour, but granted that was an hour of Fox News.
That would be difficult because I struggle when I watch it now because I get, not just Fox News. There are a lot of news stations where I watch and I just hear the rhetoric and I'm like, can you just report the news, please? Mm-hmm. Can we stop with this dividing language? It's constantly, the radical left or the Christian right. Like they take a small chunk and then use that to paint the whole other side as bad. And I do think Donald Trump has mastered that. I mean, I can't remember the last time he had a post, tweet, or conversation where it didn't end with the radical left and socialism. It's just there's this constant fear put out into the audience. And to me, people are buying into this and falling for it because think about it, you can't even have a conversation about socialism without someone freaking out. It's this evil, the evil socialists want to take your rights away, and it's simply not true.
When people go to those extreme languages, you know, they say things are just flat out evil. I'd begin by questioning how evil. How do we know how evil?
Right.
Because everything has an element of evil.
True.
Everything. It's just how much, right?
And by the way, if you want to voice your opinion on this topic, please call the number at the bottom of the screen, which is 708-554-7836, or also 708-5-LISTEN. And Oz, hopefully, by the way, hi to all the audience. Hi, IQ, Fran Wilson, best name ever, Oz, Cindy Plaza. I think that's everyone. Thank you for, tuning into us each and every Sunday at 11 a.m. Central Daylight Time.
Yeah.
I never expected that the most of our show would be about mental health. And I got to say, I'm really enjoying it.
I am too. I'm liking the theme. I think it's helpful. But I guess more to what we were talking about on the extremist language and how to tell is, I just want to know kind of your thoughts on when it comes to politics. Do you think that everything is on a spectrum? Or do you think that there is like this bad guy that we should be looking for?
I mean, I think there are bad guys. Like me personally, where I stand, I think our whole system is broken, and we need to fix it.
The whole system
right now, I mean, two choices. If you have a choice between left or right, do you actually have a real choice? I don't think so. You're being, in most cases, forced to choose between option A or option B, which neither one are particularly good options. So I think we need to, at least not this election, like I'm not voting third party this time, but after this, I would rather spend a lot more time trying to get third party candidates in there so we can get more options available. Because truthfully, I'm tired of choosing between a Republican or a Democrat. The Republican comes into office, makes these policies, then we switch to the Democrat, who rolls them back, institutes their own. And it's just this, it's back and forth rather than finding a way to actually fix all these problems.
I wonder if having more options would make anything better. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking out loud now, but I do see we have a caller.
We do. I do think more options would be better, because right now, in my opinion, Bernie Sanders was pushed out by both the right and the left, Democrats and Republicans. Neither of them wanted Bernie Sanders running because, to me, he is very left leaning, and would have been a shock to the country. And I think I would have loved to have voted for Sanders, but I don't think either side would have ever let that happen.
Well, the thing is that I would have loved to have voted for Warren. But
she's tough.
When we have so many good candidates on one quote unquote side, then you look at people like Biden and it's like, well, if we can't even get Biden, why would we be under the impression that the country is any more left than Biden?
Right.
If we can't even get him,
That's true. I don't think he's not even as left as I would like him to be.
Agreed. I think he's not as left as most people that I know would like him to be.
I think the right paints this picture that he is this left socialist. It's like, no. He's not a socialist at all. He's a Democrat. I would argue that I'm a socialist. So I would say he definitely isn't one.
Well, yeah, it's when people who I put assumptions behind things, I would say be careful. And when you catch yourself doing it or you catch your friends doing it, try to call yourselves on it, because I feel like it's when we get ourselves into these echo chambers is when we are doing the most harm. And that's what I was actually thinking about when I was listening to Fox News, was that there was like a panel going on at some point, and they had somebody who I would have considered on our side on the panel. And I thought, this kind of reminds me of some of what we're doing, right? Where it's not legitimate news, right? It is, when you agree with them, you're going to go and hear what they say and see what their thoughts are. So I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily so bad, as long as you don't, I mean, they claim to be news. But I don't know.
Claim to be news, but they're not.
Yeah.
Before we get to our caller, we did, put together a few suggestions. So I'll start with the first one. Practicing self-care. That is important because politics can be frustrating. Example, if you look at my video from 2 weeks ago on my other channel, I think that's the first time where I got visibly pissed off on camera. I was beyond frustrated. And you see me like ready to flip my desk. And I'm normally patient and calm. But the person was essentially excusing the children being abused in cages, and had said, well, just take the abuse out of it. And perhaps I strawmanned her position more than I should have, but it's incredibly frustrating when you're trying to talk about the problems, and rather than recognizing, hey, this is an issue, the person says, well, essentially we can ignore the abuse and talk about these other things. Like that's not how it works. You don't get to take the bad out of the conversation. You have to factor it all in.
I want to know why somebody thinks that you can do that you can just ignore it. Like it's, why would you ignore it? What?
It shouldn't be ignored. But anyways, would you like to get to our first caller?
Yeah.
Sweet. All right. Fred, you are on with Ethan and Jenna. How's your weekend going?
I'm Fran, F-R-A-N.
Fran. Oh, I'm sorry.
Fran, it heard Fred.
Hi, how are you doing?
Thank you. How are y'all doing?
We're doing good. Just talking, mental health and politics.
Hanging in there.
Very good. Yeah. And I think what you said about the self-care is really important, because my father was a sociopath and narcissistic. He was more charming than Trump is, but it's been kind of hard having to heal from childhood trauma with that type of president and the Republican enablers of him.
I can understand that.
And I think that's something that, we need to kind of understand, that because of Trump's rhetoric and actions, he's really abusing a lot of people. And, I think the whole country is experiencing, at least some parts of the country are experiencing some kind of trauma from the rhetoric and the actions of the current administration. Whether you're African American or LGBTQ plus, or wherever you are in your life, there's a potential for actually having to deal with a certain amount of trauma from this administration.
Yeah. Sorry. No, please.
I'm sorry. I was just curious, Fran, how you're dealing with the trauma.
It's been a little difficult. As I said, I'm in therapy, so that's really good. And that's helping a great deal. But it's like I told my therapist, there were times when, Trump would sound off. It's like, it's not making this easier.
I feel like everything he does is based on finding a way to rally his base and divide the country. I mean, I heard someone call him the divider in chief, and I think that is accurate. And whether you're on the right or the left, if you just look at his Twitter every day, and all this man does is name call and insult other people and try to get his base to stand up against this radical left socialism that's allegedly destroying our country. And I guess I don't get why people fall for this. Like, why?
Well,
if you support him for his policies, fine. But how do you get to this point where you think all the left is evil?
yeah, I think part of it has, there's a couple of things going on. One, some people, conservatives, there's been studies, I guess, that, the brains of conservatives and liberals are a little different. And so conservatives are a little bit more, I don't know, I don't want to say fearful, but they're more concerned about security. So anything that pushes the security buttons might be triggering for them, as well as Trump has got a lot of support from the evangelical right. And the problem with religion, in my view, is that, if you have to rely on faith and feelings instead of your thinking processes, you're going to fall for certain things. You're set up to be more gullible, I think.
Right. I know it sounds bad to say this, but at times I do have trouble trusting the judgment of people who use faith, because if they're not using their reasoning skills and they're using faith in one aspect of their life, what's to stop them from doing that in other aspects of their life? And I think this is where epistemology comes in. And it's funny, I almost embarrassed to admit this, I didn't know what it was until this year. And I feel the most important thing that I learned in 2020 is the most important question: how do you know what you know? Because I still find myself occasionally making bad arguments, or I'll say something and I'll be like, wait a second, like, where did I learn this from? Did I actually investigate this? Did I look further into it? Or am I just believing this because it's something I heard? And I would implore everybody, anytime you're going to make a statement or think about something, ask yourself how you know that. Look into it. See if you have a good reason to believe that.
Which is very good advice. So, yeah, it's something I'm beginning to try to do. I'm a new atheist. About 3 months ago left theism. So it's like I'm in the process of deconverting from that, too.
Congratulations.
Yes. Big. If we could,
Thank you.
Everyone who's watching, put those hands together and let's welcome a new baby atheist to our world.
Thank you. Yeah, we have to thank Matt Dillahunty, because I was just out of curiosity watching the Atheist Experience one day. He was like, well, what the heck, and because I like to learn new things.
Right.
And he said, oh, I just don't see any evidence for a God. And it's like, damn, neither do I.
That's kind of what happened with me too. Listening to the Atheist Experience is what got me away from believing. But as I've said in the past, I'm one of the lucky ones. I was able to drop my beliefs off fairly quickly when I realized the mistakes I was making. What about you? Was it difficult for you to let that go?
Yes and no. Certain aspects, yes. I think when I was younger, I was more of an agnostic, and then because of an experience, I became more theistic.
Okay.
But I kept searching, and I went to different religions, and it's like, it's just not working. And actually, reasoning is actually working much better for me than believing in a deity, and I'm spending more time learning new things as opposed to trying to keep up the belief in the deity. I don't have to work at it so much. But there's some aspects that are tough, like, the idea of no afterlife, things like that.
That can be difficult to come to terms with. I know it was for me at first, because I have this obsession with learning, and I hate the idea that I'm going to die without knowing everything. Like, I want all the answers before I die for everything, and it sucks.
I know that. I agree with you. That's my reason I want to live to be 120, because I have to see how it ends.
So, jumping back around to politics, have you ever found yourself, like, what do you do when you get frustrated in a heated political discussion? How do you handle it?
It's really tough. I try to keep in mind, even though it can be triggering, I try to keep in mind that just to be charitable to the other person, that we all are trying to kind of promote the truth or develop, hopefully develop a conversation instead of just talking at each other, but, that we all kind of represent what we consider to be the truth in a situation. And so I try to be charitable about that and give them credit for that.
So how is that being a new atheist during an election year such as this?
Yes.
Yeah, well, part of it is some of the people said that they're in the blood of Jesus and all of that. It's like, and they're protected. It's like that helps too. Matt just put me over the edge, but I was just thinking, oh, this is like a bunch of crap.
Do you see people following suit all around you, left and right, or do you think that this is kind of all happening behind closed doors?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch what you said.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to mute between. I'm just curious if you think that from what you've seen and who you've talked to and just kind of your own environment, if this is something that you've been seeing happening all around you because of the political climate and everything, or if you think that this is, from what you've seen, it's just kind of personal and everybody's kind of keeping it to themselves if it's happening.
It's more national news. I work for a university, and so we're very research oriented there. So there's not a lot of anti-maskers that are on, working at the university, and the university has really strict guidelines of wearing masks. So I don't see it there so much. So it's basically the national news that I saw that in.
Okay. I'm just curious. I'm just trying to figure out what it's like, because I'm trying to make sure that we're not in our own echo chamber, just realizing how easy that is to do when you agree with people.
I'll say I unfortunately noticed that the other day. If you go back, okay, so looking back in January and February, I desperately, more than anything, wanted atheist friends. I was like, I need people who share my opinion to talk to, because I felt alone. Like the majority of my Facebook friends and family, everyone's Christian and Republican. I'm like, I have no one to talk to. Fast forward, next thing I know, I build this small community of atheists, and now I'm loaded with atheist friends, which I love. But it's also not something I love, because now I'm like, wait, a lot of these people agree with me. I'm like, I have just created my own echo chamber. I need to find people now who disagree with me, to challenge me on these topics, or to put me in my place if I ever get out of line. Because in the past couple of weeks, I actually made the mistake of straw manning the Republican Party and Christians several times. And fortunately, I did have a Christian friend that called me out on it. And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, right? I shouldn't have done that. It was irresponsible. But
well, we can also be.
But I think that's where the internet and news outlets, like I get like the New Yorker, things like that, and New York magazine. So that helps give you like what other people are saying. If you don't know anybody personally or that much personally.
Right.
But what I like to do is, I don't know if it's street epistemology, but when somebody has a disagreement with me, I like to ask them, well, how are you reaching that conclusion? I really want to know. 'Cause I'm willing to change my opinion on things if there's a really good reason to do so.
Well, as long as we just make sure that we keep questioning each other, right? Like, for example, when we do a stream like this, when we say things like conservatives this and liberals that, when we put things into a black and white language of ourselves, then I think it is good to try to kind of stop ourselves and remind ourselves that everything isn't black and white. We aren't broken down into just liberals and conservatives.
Nope.
We're not just left and right. We're not just religious and not religious. So to just kind of remind ourselves that there's just so many different ways. Yeah, I think but just to kind of point that out, that and that's something that we can do to keep ourselves from building our own echo chambers.
And
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what people don't realize is that if you actually sit down with people who disagree with you or are politically on the opposite side of the spectrum, you'll find there are a lot more you have in common than you realize. But again, this is where it goes back to the media being a problem. It paints these pictures of these two extremes, and everyone buys into it rather than just talking to the other person and finding out where they believe, because a lot of us stand by the same beliefs. Republicans, Democrats, we both want freedom. We both want our basic human rights. I just think at times, although I'm painting with a broad brush here more than I should, at times I think Republicans don't actually understand what real freedoms are. They want to dictate what freedom is. They want to.
You can speak for yourself. You can say, as a Republican, I used to want this, because I can say that I did. As a Republican, I didn't understand how my rights were being in any way violated. I couldn't see it. I didn't understand it. So you can speak. We can all speak for ourselves, and I think that's fair.
Right, and it goes into like, for instance, the flag. I remember getting upset over people kneeling over the flag and thinking, oh, they shouldn't have a right to do that. And it's like, come on, like, that is freedom at its finest, being able to kneel if necessary. Like, while I would never step on or burn a flag, I'm sorry, if somebody does that, that is still an expression of freedom. And just because it hurts your feelings doesn't mean you get to restrict them from doing it.
Yeah, there's such a thing as civil disobedience, and even though kneeling at a flag really isn't against the law, people were acting like it was, and yeah, I agree with you.
Look at that, we built our own echo chamber.
Yeah, I know.
For those watching, we do still have open lines if you want to give us a call and talk mental health and politics.
Okay, so I'll move on so other people can call in. But thank you for taking my call, and I hope you have a good day.
You too.
Thanks for calling in.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So I think the tip number 2 would be to remember to unplug. There are times where it can get exhausting messaging back and forth on Facebook. And I typically shy away from more like the back and forth on Facebook. I prefer a conversation on the phone or audio, because when you force someone to actually talk to you and not just sit behind a computer typing, they are going to be less defensive because now they're in a one-on-one situation. So to me, I would rather send someone a message like, hey, you got a few minutes to talk. And I've done that to some of my Republican friends when I'm watching the conversation between some of my Democrat and Republican friends, and they're just going back and forth, and it's just this noise, and neither one is understanding the other side. And I've reached out to try and, well, I guess explain my position or explain the other side's position better, so they're not just insulting each other. And I typically, I don't know, I don't like once people start insulting each other. That's kind of where I'm done.
And that's fair, because that's when people have stopped using their prefrontal cortex. They've stopped using their logical thinking part of their brain, and they started using their amygdala, their emotional response. If I'm using my terms correctly, there's an amphibian brain on the inside, where that's where your hormones come from. And when your emotions get triggered and you start getting more emotionally responsive, you're not thinking out whether or not what you're saying and how you're saying it actually makes sense. You're just this hurts, this would hurt me, so I'm gonna hurt you with it, and it's just Rather, just take a step back, get your blood pressure down, think about what you're actually trying to say and if you're actually achieving that. And then also think about what the other person is trying to say and what you, and if you think that they're achieving that, right? If you think that you know what somebody's trying to say, then you could start with saying, are you saying this? That's a really good technique I learned from street epistemology, is to clarify it, because almost every time I have had that, like, are you saying this? Like, I've been wrong. No, that's not actually what they're saying. They said something the wrong way, or there's a nuance to it that I didn't see until I clarified with charitable listening, you know?
And that's why it's so important to, when you feel that emotion take over, to take a step back, to unplug. Go back to the conversation the next day, a week later, just after you've had enough time to absorb what the other person's trying to say and time to calm down. And you touched on an interesting point, Jenna, when you said people, they'll like, hey, oh, they said this to me, well, I'm going to show them and get them back. That eye for an eye mentality kind of frustrates me. And I feel like in many ways that has come from religion. And even when people escape religion, like I know many atheists who still want to fight fire with fire at all times. Now, there are situations where that's great, but I just wish people would take the time to lend a compassionate ear. And granted, not all scenarios call for it. There are some hateful, angry people. But for me personally, I don't find fighting hate with hate productive, particularly for people who actively do that. If this isn't something you regularly do, chances are if you try fighting hate with hate, you're going to lose, in my opinion.
Chances are going to produce more hate.
Yes,
sure.
Too. Would you like to get to our next caller?
Let's.
Sweet. This one does not have a name, but they want to talk about how politics directly affect your mental health. You're on with Ethan and Jenna. Who is this?
I barely have a name. This is RAO.
Hey,
Hey!
RAO. How's it going?
Oh, RAO. That makes sense.
I'm doing excellent. I wasn't able to stream this morning, so I thought I'd catch your show. And the topic was something that I've been heavily focusing on for the past 6 months or so.
Yeah.
Politics or mental health?
Basically how the two relate directly, because like when you first start getting invested in politics, instead of just being a one topic voter, because I've noticed that a lot with one topic voters. They'll have one thing that they focus on, and that will determine whether they're Democrat or Republican.
Right.
So once you expand from that, you actually get to start finding out who you are on that spectrum, and it really starts to broaden your mind about what you feel and believe when you're paying attention to current events, to different topics, and where everybody sits on those topics. So just getting out of that two-party mentality does a whole lot to broaden your spectrum of what you think about the country you live in.
What would you say that you are? How would you identify? Sorry, politically.
More along the lines of the way Switzerland runs, where it's socialist, and everybody is trained and armed to protect their country. I love the idea. That would be my presidential platform: is universal health care and civilians with tanks.
Wait. Civilians with tanks?
Why are we giving civilians tanks?
Well, I think the reason that we need a well-trained and well-armed and well-regulated militia is in the event that the U.S. government becomes or the U.S. military becomes a tool for the U.S. government. That's exactly what they saw in England, and that's why the forefathers wanted our people to defend ourselves from our country in the event that we had to.
See, and that I understand that, but I think that was during a different time. We have come a long way as a society since then. And one of the things I think people forget to factor in when concerned about the military or police taking over is that the military and police are our brothers, our sisters, our mothers. So you're going to have to convince them, us, to turn on each other. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying it's highly unlikely. And it scares me that we have a gun problem in this country and we would want to move that to tanks. That's, I think, the last problem we need is some extremist white nationalist with a tank going down the street, towards Antifa.
Right.
So,
you think about when people were, I mean, granted, I don't have all of the information, but when they were protesting and that guy got the assault rifle and started shooting out of the crowd, if he, for example, Ethan says, if he had a tank.
right, it would be, and people, I don't think the majority of society is mature enough to hold a gun. I'm speaking to emotional maturity because think about how many times you see someone say, well, if you do this, I'm going to shoot you. If you step on my property, I'm going to shoot you. Like, okay, so someone just stepping on your property is worthy of being shot. I question these people. And I find that unless you are mentally developed, unless you've had self-defense training, unless you've spent time learning how to de-escalate situations, you shouldn't have a gun. Because I can tell you,
that's why I was saying it should be more like Switzerland in the sense that military service is mandatory and you are trained in those situations before you were given those rights. You get the training and then you get the rights. And if we have everybody going through some sort of military training, we can identify right then and there if the person is psychologically fit to own a firearm.
But how are we, okay, would you agree or disagree that there are plenty of people in both military and police who are not psychologically fit to hold a gun?
Police, yes. Military, they are, I trust them while they're enlisted, but what the military does to people is absolutely gruesome. And there are some people who never come back from it. And so I wouldn't trust them with the gun in a civilian sense, but I would trust them in the line of duty.
I don't think soldiers should automatically be given trust. That shouldn't be the default position. That should be earned. And I don't see how being in the military versus going into a civilian situation makes one more trustworthy than the other. My brother, when he was in Afghanistan, he told me horror stories of how some of these other military people acted and what they would do. Example, there was a child, he found out a child drowned, like right outside of his facility. And it turns out the group of soldiers were by the kid, laughing and taking bets on how long he would last, a child. Now, do those people honestly sound fit to have a gun?
You're putting it in this is a very interesting conversation because that is a very small snippet who I granted that does say a lot about their character. But what we don't know is a lot of things. We don't know what it's like to be in that kind of an environment for however amount of time that they've been there, and whatever cultures they've been exposed to, in what ways they've been exposed to them, in what ways these guys are coping just to survive. When you think about people who laugh at funerals, does that mean that that's a bad person, or is it a coping thing? I'm just saying that there's a lot that we don't know. And so when you look at that and say, is that person qualified to own or operate a gun? Those are different questions. If we're giving a person a gun to operate it in a war zone, well, then I think almost anybody should be qualified. But if this is a different situation to where this is a person who is now at home on the ranch and they're teaching their kids, you know, how to farm. Do they need a gun? You know, there's just so many nuances
If you're on
here.
a farm, you definitely need a gun for wolves and predators that will come and get your livestock.
Or to put it something down. Right. But does it need to be a gun? Could it be something else? You know, there's just so many nuances to each different part of these conversations. What I'm wondering is, how are each of you doing right now?
Sorry.
You, Ethan and Ario, how are each of you doing having this conversation? This is a tough, nuanced conversation. I'm curious how y'all are doing. Like,
oh, I'm fine. I'm cool. I'm having a conversation with a friend about something that we disagree about. So
right.
I mean, this is par for the course for me.
Cool. Ethan.
But yeah, what
well, the reason I'm asking is because this is a typical thing that I don't think many people are exposed to, is being able to hear two people on the same side who are disagreeing. And so since this is about, you know, politics and our mental health, rather than like really get into the politics of gun laws and all that, I kind of want to kind of expose how we're each handling this conversation.
It can be difficult. And for example, I've noticed I get more short with my family. And I think that's because when they talk, I just hear the same rhetoric I used to use. For example, I recently found out that a family member believes QAnon is legit, and that the media is shutting down free speech, and that QAnon is entirely justified because they're trying to take down these evil Satanist pedophile rings. And when I started to ask questions, the immediate response was, "Oh, you just have a rebuttal for everything." And I'm like, I'm actually just asking questions, and I'm trying to clarify the definition of what Satanism actually is, because Satanists are not bad people. But when I hear them talk,
Satanism is just atheism with extra steps.
right? Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. When I hear my family say, "Make America great again," or recently they had said to me that this is the greatest country, and when I said, "Okay, why? Can you give me an example?" I was like, "Healthcare, education. What are you talking about?" And all they could say is freedom. I'm like, "Okay, well, we're not the only free country in the world. Can you give me another example?" And immediately they got defensive, and my family member started yelling and raising her voice, saying I was disrespecting and I'm so lost. And I'm like, I'm just asking a question. But it bothers me when I see my family falling victim to beliefs without a good reason. And I know I'm not perfect. I'm sure there are things I believe and I don't have a good reason for it. But I actively do my best, and I wish there was a way to get through to them. And, you know, some of them, they immediately result to insults. For example, one of them was like, well, referring to when I was depressed and had seizures, they said, well, you were out of your mind for several years, so you shouldn't even have an opinion on this. Like, you know what's going on in the world. And I wanted to look at him and be like, F you. You will not discredit my opinion because I had depression or epilepsy. I worked my ass off. Or I should say, I worked my mind off to get to the point to where I'm at. And another one believes I'm just a victim of liberal propaganda. It's like, no.
Okay. So that is when you should stop having that conversation with that person.
Right.
When it triggers you directly, you and that person and that conversation should not happen at that moment. Maybe try it again later with both of you prepared to come into the conversation and, try to take it that way if you both think that it's worth it. But in that case, if you can't get around that emotional response, which is understandable, at least from your side, if not from the other person's side, because we don't know the other person, they might have some emotionally triggered responses as well. Just the fact that you disagree with them might be something that they're unfamiliar with and don't know how to respond to and might make them afraid. So just the fact that it seems like maybe you both have this emotional response, might I make a suggestion that I've already made, which is don't have that conversation with that person at that moment. Do you agree?
I agree. At that time, it would have been best for me to unplug. Unfortunately, like there was only one person in my family that was on it's a little cousin, and she's pretty liberal. But she actually got really upset and kind of cried and walked away. And so the conversation just went to shit. And it all started with a gigantic Trump poster they brought in with him like flying like a superhero. And I'm just like, oh. And they wanted my nephew to be in the picture. And that's where I immediately drew a hard line. And I was like, no, he can't consent to this. He's not getting in a picture with a Trump supporter. And they thought, or they had said that, well, oh, so it's okay for him to be a part of your atheist content. I'm like, no, like my nephew doesn't wear atheist shirts. I'm like, he doesn't partake in my conversations. I'm not going to force my views on him. And that's, I get annoyed when people put their children with statements or political or religious positions. Like this child doesn't understand this. You have no right to force this on them.
So then I wonder what those people think.
This is a direct brainwashing tactic, because what you're doing is you're giving somebody the emblems and the symbols and all the meaning behind it, and you're making that a part of their life before they even understand what political party, what religious affiliation they're in. Right. Because if they break away from that, they have to break from all of these memories that they were like ingrained with the entire time they were growing up.
This is interesting because I'm thinking the devil's advocate. And I'm thinking, what if, to think about it from their side, they see a kid that they want to put in a shirt that represents a cause that they believe in and that they spend a lot of time and energy on.
Right.
Like your atheism, right?
How much time and energy did the kid put into that?
Well,
they are now using their child as a poster board for their views.
My point though is I wonder if it even matters if you would put him on your shows.
I wonder
if that's something they've even thought about.
For one, I would never do that.
Well, but to play the devil's advocate in the sense, and for the reason of, I am so sorry, I'm losing my train of thought, but I know I have a point here that is good. The reason is because the way it sounds is like I would react if I were to find out that somebody were to put a kid into Bible school. Do you want kids exposed to things, and what do you want them exposed into? Do you want them exposed to religion from a young age? Do you want them exposed to politics from a young age? What age do you want them exposed to? Because when I think about how much I want people exposed to, it's more, not less.
I agree.
Well, there's a difference between exposure. Exposure is just letting people know that they're making them aware of it. But when you're putting your children in political and religious garb, you're giving them crosses, you're raising them conservative, you're raising them Democrat, if your political and religious views are a heavy factor in your child's life, then your child is going to either have those views or completely break away from you, depending on the relationship that they have with you. So there's a difference between exposing somebody and ingraining them.
Yeah.
It's true.
Oh, that's a good point to make then. Sorry if I completely derailed it. I just felt like it sounded like the opposite of the goals that I felt we represent. Does that make sense? When it comes to exposure, I think that they should be exposed to politics from a young age.
I
Right.
agree.
Like exposed neutrally.
Well, but is there neutral?
Exposed without bias.
Like, is that even a thing?
The best way I found to get neutrality is to look at what's the same from both sides. Listen to what's the same from both sides, and that's where you're going to find the true part, and then expand from there.
Which sides?
Well, like watch CNN, watch Fox News. The thing that they both say is most likely true, and then the other 12 minutes of the 15-minute show is their opinion on the 3 minutes of what's actually happened.
I disagree. I think. Go ahead.
No, sorry. Go ahead, please.
I just think that when you say both, that I don't think there are two sides. I don't think that there is just CNN and Fox News. I think if anything, disregard CNN and Fox News and listen to everything else. You know, when you see a kid being pushed into
information from independent sources as well.
Well, but I'm saying, like, when you see a kid being pushed into Bible school, okay, give them every other source of, mythological, woo you can find, whether it's rock energy, whether it's a Star of David, whether it's, a Quran, whether it's, anything, dream catcher, anything that you can think of that might expose the woo of it. Do you see what I'm saying about the more exposure, or am I alone here?
No, I see completely what you're saying, and I was just I was overgeneralizing with CNN and Fox News, but yes, the more sources that you get from, the more accurately you can paint the picture.
Yeah,
I agree.
And so, and that's what I'm saying is not one or the other, but as many as possible. And I used both incorrectly, and thank you for correcting me on that. But yeah,
sorry.
Basically what I'm saying is multiple sources instead of leading somebody down one path and telling them this is the only way.
I think the most important thing we could also teach our children is anytime someone tells you something, ask. Keep asking questions. Why? Be annoying. I did that at a young age. I would drive my mom I would drive my mom absolutely bonkers with constantly, well, why? Just like when she first told, I was like, I think 6 or 7 years old, and she's trying to tell me how Jesus is the Son of God, but also God. And I remember like, wait, what? That doesn't make sense. He's God or he's the Son of God. And I didn't mean to be rude, but it didn't make sense to me at all. And I've done that most of my life. Like I would constantly upset teachers with just why? And it's exciting to see that my nephew is doing the same thing. That's just but why? I'm like, dude, he is going to be a skeptic because he wants to know why.
How would you feel if he wants to know why still 10 years from now, but then he went into like a program to become a minister? How would you feel? And what would you do?
I mean, I would be, of course, supportive of his, decisions. I don't want him to just follow me or my brother, but I would continue to implore him to ask and keep asking more questions. Fortunately, both my brother and I are atheists, so he and I'd like to think decent skeptics. So I think he's growing up in a good atmosphere. At least I hope so.
Cool. Thanks. And I wanted people to hear what you would do.
Oh, I was going to touch on something.
Oh.
I was going to touch on something from earlier, but I can't remember what it is now.
Oh, no.
But, yeah, let's see, we were talking about, oh yeah. Do you remember that episode of Star Trek Next Generation when Crusher was in the academy and he about picked a fight with that dude that was 3 times the size? Do either of y'all remember that episode?
I've never really seen.
Okay. Well, in this, what he did was he confronted him and he acted with aggression and made a friend out of the guy because he knew the species and the culture of the species. And when I have found that a lot of conservatives that I talk to look at the left as soft. And so when you give them a little bit of confrontation, not hate, but just don't back down and give them proper confrontation, at that point, they can kind of talk to you because it feels like you're speaking their language. And I've actually started actual conversations by just saying, yes, you have a right to say whatever you want to say. I also have a right to what I have to say, and you do not have a right to shut down what I am going to say.
I'm sure that that's appropriate. See, that's the thing, is there's a certain time when anything can be appropriate. It's just determining what it is, and sounds like that has worked for you sometimes, right?
All right, RAO, we have to move on to our next caller.
All right. Well, it was great to talk to you all finally.
You too.
And I'm looking forward to tuning in again.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you. You all have a great day.
You too.
You too. It looks like we have a familiar caller.
Yes, we do. And then also, I was trying to go through like the bullet points of things to do.
In between
your mental health. How to manage your mental health in politics. And another one is not just unplugging, but excusing yourself from the conversation when necessary. It's okay to say, hey, I'm not ready for this conversation, or I'd like to step away. There's nothing wrong with that, because once you get emotional, that's when the conversation can go downhill.
Something that they say in rehab is BYOC, bring your own car. And that can apply anytime you have the chance of really getting into like an emotionally heated situation, for example, Thanksgiving, or things like that, when that might be a thing. So whether it's avoiding drink or avoiding tough conversation, if you have your vehicle there, then you can get away.
Yeah. And, it's, again, important to remember, while we have differing opinions, we should try and understand where each side is coming from as best as possible.
Well, just understand that when you're with family, that's the last time that's the hardest it will be to logically consider, without emotion, whatever opinions are being shared. Like right. That, if you want to talk about opinions, I would say stick with talking with everyone that you don't have that emotional tie to, unless you have that for kind of consent, that agreement beforehand. Hey, this might get a little tough. Can we agree to be on the same page? Can we agree to stop when it gets, too heated? That's a good point.
You want to get to our next caller?
Yeah.
Okay. I believe this is IQ. IQ, you're on with Ethan and Jenna. How's it going?
Hello again, folks.
Hey, IQ.
So I'd put in there the topic was unconventional politics. Now, I use that loosely. I had noticed discrepancies in just how we go about thinking earlier on in life. And, I've suffered from, kind of dividing myself from politics for the longest of times, just because it repulsed me. It's I've never enjoyed any forms of divisiveness and tribalism, because I started seeing it everywhere. I mean, everything seems to be that needs to be grouped into this and that, and you are this and you are that, and
Right.
this is them, this is they, and they are the others, and that repulses me. And I've suffered from the technical side of politics just because I've removed myself from that for so long. So this will be brief. I don't have if you want the technical side of politics, oh, that's Puck, baby. He's a sharp one.
He is, and yet he'll
Really?
say he doesn't know anything, which terrifies me. It does. You know
That is the humbles.
do you know what? To be honest, one of my deciding factors to stop co-hosting my political show every Wednesday was I felt I do not know enough. And not only that, I remember one day, and this is stuck in my head, messaging V and asking if they would be interested in being a guest. And they said, I don't know enough about politics to do this. And when they said that, I was like, wait, V doesn't know enough? Why the hell am I doing this? If someone like that is saying they don't know enough to do it, then I need to question myself just a little bit more. And I get excited. Like, to me, it's like, okay, I want to have these conversations. They're important. They need to happen. But if I can't properly object to all the information or the majority of the information coming out, then I have to question if I should be doing it. And I came to the answer that no, I shouldn't be doing it until I can learn more, or perhaps change the dynamic of the show to bringing on experts on each side, and I focus on questions. Because the thought that I could be giving out wrong information or letting incorrect news get out as a result of something I've done is upsetting to me. I while I want to change people's minds and get people talking to each other, I also want to be as responsible as possible when doing this.
And this is why I remove myself from a lot of political discussions, because I'm not well enough versed, at least when somebody hops into a political discussion, that typically means that they at least are confident that they know what they're talking about and they have looked into enough, or you just see somebody just spatting off what they believe in this and that and blah blah blah. But when I hear people that know a lot about the technical side of politics and they start spatting off a lot of different forms of government into this and that, and I'm just like, I don't know any of this, and I'm going to be completely ignorant, and I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to that. When it comes to politics, and why I called it unconventional, is because I have an unconventional view on politics. I try to be respectful towards people. Like whenever, like my views on America, I don't want to disrespect troops. I don't want to disrespect somebody who has passion in anything, or somebody who has laid down their life to protect their way of life or their ideas, because that's really important to them. And that's important to me, regardless if I believe what or agree with what they're doing, but, I don't want to disrespect people who are laying down their lives for their beliefs.
Right.
But I'm an American, but it's kind of jus soli. I was born here. I didn't really have a choice. I guess I could have left, but where the fuck am I going to go? By the time I get to adulthood now, I'm married, I got kids, and, just up and moving becomes just a little bit complicated at that point. But it's really, in my head, it's all tribalism. What really fucks me up about politics is that I see tribalism everywhere. It's us versus them. It's you have to be a Republican, you have to be a Democrat, or you're a liberal. No, I'm none of those. I'm just me. I don't look at any one particular subject and say I'm for or against that. I cannot ignore the nuances that describes each individual circumstance that surrounds what goes on with that.
Right.
What's happening right there. Yes, it's that. I'm against that. But what happened?
And that is what is wrong with the Tea Party system, is that it boils it down to you are blue or you are red.
And it's not that simple. It's a spectrum. It's not black and white. Like Jenna and I, while we agree on a lot and we're both left leaning, I'm sure we're going to find topics where we don't agree on. And that's why we need to stop painting with this broad brush and assume everyone just has these two identities and that's it.
That's actually a good point, though.
Right wing, and I try to stay in the plane. That's kind of where I am.
Well, but at the same time, we have to be able.
Anybody takes a stance on a particular topic before they hear the facts of the individual circumstances is what I'm against. And that's
so this is the thing. We say that, but at the same time, we say, "I don't care why you vote. Go vote."
That's exercising people's opinions, and Puck should really call into this. I mean,
well, but this is why I think that we should be able to have this conversation. Have this conversation is because we are being given ballots. We're being given votes, which we deserve as human creatures. As citizens of this country, we deserve that. But we also deserve a piece of the conversation, even if we're not experts. Correct?
Oh, yeah. That's a big divide right there, where it comes to your opinion, and is there any validity in your opinion? Yes, you have the right to your opinion, but do you have the right to exercise your opinion on others? And that's where there's that gray area where we consider this vote to just be your opinion. You have the right to vote. You have the right to your opinion, but when you start voting, it's no longer subjective. It's becoming like objective, because you are placing your opinion on a stance that will affect other people. So, and so when you have the uneducated people who are ignorant to certain things putting their opinion out there that will affect other people, it comes down to what is more important: how you should live your life, or how other people should live their lives. And that is the worst part about it for me, because I do not have the right to tell somebody else how to live their lives.
That's true.
How do we live, or how do we not live? And the laws that are put in place seem to be more centered on how do we not live. What do I have the right to not have to experience? And that's not fair. That's not good. And that's not freedom.
No. One of my friends brought up an interesting question, and I'm going to try and represent him as best as possible. He had said, along the lines of, should there be a minimum requirement to be able to vote? Like, you have to know a certain amount or answer certain questions. For example, is someone who cannot tell you the president's job in specific details and what it all entails be qualified to vote? Like, if you
need a license to shoot rabbits, don't we?
Like, if you know nothing about politics, should you really be voting? Should it be okay for you to vote? Like,
that's my point. Is that we've gone in a country trying to progress towards more people voting, and the more people have the right to vote, the more we're starting to wonder, should more people be allowed to vote? Again, yes. Why? Because the more people that talk about it, the more opinions that are exposed, the more questions that can be asked, the more problems we can solve.
I mean, perhaps maybe thinking a little off the cusp here, but is that somewhat of a solution to make to have voting licenses?
I mean, so
it doesn't mean that you need to be completely educated and pass this test on histories and all this stuff, but you have to at least be given the information on what exactly issues are, and
Isn't that what registration is?
government you're in, what you're voting for. At least have a basic understanding of what's going on and the truth behind whatever the opposing team is and what you stand for, and have that standardized where there is truth being supplied to people about what exactly is going on. So you're at least educated moving in to what's going on. So you're not getting barraged and your opinion isn't biased by propaganda.
So, and I think
just thinking
sorry, IQ.
No, go ahead.
I think my objection to that, the point that there should be a minimum requirement would be, what about people in poorer communities who don't have access to the education? Would requiring a minimum level disproportionately affect poorer people who don't have access to the same education system? So that's where I see as one of the problems if we implemented something like that.
I think the same way that they attack voters registration, they attack all that, they'll attack anything they can. Go ahead.
Because you're thinking about it as like, standardized education. But say you want to go hunting, you have to go get a hunting license. And there's a certain amount of criteria that you need to meet. And that's to go shoot a deer.
Right.
If you want to voice your opinion that affects the country and affects how your neighbors can live their lives, you should. I don't see it to be that big of a deal to go to a polling place. There's places where you go to apply for your voting license, and it's not like you can be rejected, but it's a place that you have to go through certain steps, be educated in what exactly you're doing instead of just, handing a pistol to a toddler.
Right.
Maybe if somebody can't read, there's audio that they can listen to just be briefed on what's going on. At least give something to the people that informs them on what they're doing a little bit better. It would be a help. Anything, really.
Yeah.
So that's what government class is supposed to be for in like the school system. That's what isn't that what registration and all of these things are supposed to be for, is the sense that it's to do that minus the pass and fail, right? When you have a driver's license, you can fail. When you have any kind of license that you apply for, you can fail, but you can't fail a voter test. It's not like you can, that's something that you can deny somebody. Well, but that's my point though, is that I think that's why they don't do that, is because they can't fail you. Like I think that's what registration is.
Failed us, and there must be a way to correct this, because the system has definitely failed a number of people. And,
I think it's failing.
Nothing's ever going to be perfect, but something needs to be done differently.
Yes.
But we're constantly doing that, aren't we?
To me.
So this is the thing, is I've thought that the system is just broken and we just need to start over. It's like, well, but look, and this is the only reason I'm starting to realize this is after talking to actually Holy Kool-Aid about this, in the sense of the reason that it's improving is because of how it's set up. And some of the things that we're trying to toss out are the only reason that we are able to get as far as we have. So it's like this like catch-22, you know what I mean?
Right.
IQ?
Well, my car breaks down from time to time, but it gets fixed.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that's what the Constitution is for, right? The amendments.
That it's it's garbage. It just means that there's a flaw in it that needs to be corrected, and we just need to figure out what these flaws are exactly and correct them. But what I've seen, the major problem with politics is the divisiveness.
Yes.
It's that, it's the main problem is that we are so focused and so pushed, spoon-fed actually, so many different forms of tribalism to where it's just normalized to have it, the us versus them mentality, when we really need to be working together. Yes, we're going to have different ideals and different preferences on, how people want to live their lives. And that's a really tricky thing because you can't please everybody. especially with opposing views, but working together instead of just, creating this imaginary war, drawing all these lines in the sand, this American pride to where, like, hold on, aren't we all on the same fucking planet? Yes, we have different views and ideals that are surrounding everybody and the way we want to live, but there's a lot of shit that we need to work together on, instead of drawing these arbitrary lines in the sand and saying that, we're the best thing in the world, because that's not true. We're all fucking people.
Right.
And we need to stop segregating ourselves so much over things that really don't need to be segregated.
Mm-hmm.
I think
it's
people.
Me versus me is a little more important than us versus them.
Well, I think
get your head straight. Get yourself together, and getting along with other people is just a little bit easier.
I think the mistake people are making right now is they're viewing this as a sports game. Like, it's almost like it's their favorite team. I mean, look at all the memorabilia they buy and the posters and stuff, and decorate their house. It's like this is not a sports game. There's more at stake than this. We're not against each other. We need to find a way to come to the table. I mean, if I was a politician, or I was president, the first thing I would do is grab some of the smartest people from both sides, put them in a room, make sure they can't be influenced by lobbyists, and start getting shit done. That's how I look at it.
That's why I don't watch sports, actually. If you look at the bottom line of what the NFL earned last year, and then compare that to the bottom line of the American Cancer Society, it's disturbing that we are focused on playing games.
Right.
So do we cut funding to the sports, or do we try to influence people?
To my face, because that is fucked up. Yes, we are all allowed to have fun and enjoy life and do what we want to do, but our focus is wrong. Yeah. We are too focused on competition to where collaboration should be more of a focus. Right. Solve a lot of problems.
I'm just now realizing that this may not actually be a bad thing, and the only reason I took that mindset was because of playing the devil advocate mindset as you're talking. But I'm realizing that maybe our ability as a country to devote so much time and energy and money towards sports is just exposing our self-medication, our own dissociation from reality, right? So that exposure is what can help us realize that is how we got politics into the spotlight, is by realizing, oh, people are looking at Hollywood and sports. Let's turn politics into a political game show. And then people will start paying attention. And now look, more people are paying attention. Look at how many more people are voting, have ever, like 54, 52 something million. Anyway, a lot of people are voting. I think that a lot of more people are paying attention to politics than have. And I do need to look this up. Because I haven't looked this up. I'm not pulling this from a legitimate source. I'm just putting this from what I've seen. But do you think that that's in the end a good thing? Because it is bringing attention to it. It is now we are even the common people talking about the flaws that even we see. And you see where I'm going with this?
So,
yeah.
Real quick, USA Today reported that most likely this election is going to have the highest voter turnout rate in the past century.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Enough people wanting change.
Right? But this is how you get people motivated, is you make them hate someone.
That's true. Can you imagine if we instituted a rank voting system? I think it's called rank shift, where essentially you put down your favorite candidate for first, for second, and for third. And I believe this is in Maine, where if you look at the ads for politicians, people who disagree are coming together in the same video and saying, hey, this is, you could vote for me this, but also you can vote for my candidate as my second. Like, they were working together to get people to vote. If we could institute that, in my opinion, in the rest of the country, we'd see what's happening in Maine, where these ads tearing down the opposition would stop happening. But unfortunately, we have people like our lovely president who specializes in divisiveness.
Gets people to pay attention. And now it's not only that, but it's exposing other flaws in the country. It's exposing flaws with so many things. And now it's like anybody can talk about is something political.
Right.
Which is that a bad thing that we get used to actually talking about politics for once?
Well, no, I think, this is why I like doing, why I'm kind of all over the place with different things I talk about, because to me, I want, when people say, oh, you can't talk politics at the dinner table on Thanksgiving. It's like, no, you should be. Yes, it doesn't have to be on Thanksgiving, but we need to normalize political conversations, religious conversations, sex conversations, drugs. We need to take all these things that society says, oh, I don't want to talk about, and shine a gigantic light on them and start talking about them. That's the only way we're going to make progress, is not by brushing these issues under the rug.
That's a good point that Bassinet makes, is that the Olympics were created to stop wars. Is that true? I'm hoping somebody's fact checking that, obviously, but if that's so, then that does make sense why we need them, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to look that up, but yeah, I mean, if only we could get people to, rather than devote all their energy into watching a guy hit a bat, maybe they should, hit a ball with their bat. Maybe they should devote more time into what's going on in the world. I don't understand how people in today's day will still say, oh, I don't talk politics, it doesn't affect me. Yes, it does. Your job, your taxes, do you get gas? Do you buy liquor? Everything you do is impacted by politics.
In the words of Zach De La Roca, what does the billboard say? Come and play. Forget about the movement.
Man.
Well, a lot of distraction out there to keep us, anesthetized to what's going on in the real world.
I'm hoping I didn't play too much devil's advocate during this show.
Governmental conspiracy and stuff. I don't want to sound like a madman.
Oh,
there's a lot of fucked up things happening.
There are,
and a lot of people should open their eyes to the world around them, and not that it's a conspiracy, but there's a lot of distracting things out there that are keeping us from seeing the big picture, and just stop, take a step back off the labels, off of the grouping, and just look at everything for what it is,
right?
Without all the bias and the propaganda, and you'll see what you're doing a lot clearer.
IQ, we got to wrap up the show in just a moment. So as always, it's a genuine pleasure talking to you. And it was awesome.
It is.
By the way, IQ made his co-hosting debut on The Perspective this past Tuesday. And we got some interesting callers. We got a couple precepts, conspiracy theorists. It was a fun one. Up until someone, of course, a precept said to us, atheists have no moral framework. It's like, oh. So if you want to check that episode out, it is on my YouTube
Yeah, we had
channel.
Batman and Robin, didn't we?
Yes.
Oh.
Anyway, it was great. I'd love to do it again sometime, man.
All right. Thanks, IQ. Have a safe rest of your week.
See you guys.
Talk to you later.
Thanks for calling back. I love when you call in.
Oh, it's always great.
IQ,
And I got to catch a clip of the show. I got to hear IQ cuss. That was nice.
I know. He was like, I was about to go. You see my hand up, and I was like, wait. And then IQ's just like, hold the fuck up. Like, he was laid into him. I was like, Well, I don't have to say anything. IQ's got this.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So Jenna, what do you have going on this week? What's your schedule looking like?
I've actually cleared it out. I'm on vacation, so I'm just going to be premiering the Atheist episode that I'm doing every week to Patreon on Tuesday, but then premiering it live on YouTube. Not live, but I guess that is what it's called, live on YouTube at 4 Central on Wednesday. And so I'll just be in the chat for that. And then the Discord, on my Discord after that, I'll have a link to. But then I'm only doing, other than that, my Carrot Noises stream, which is at 3:30 p.m. on Central on Fridays for 2 hours. And so I'm just keeping it down to these 3 shows for the week for vacation. So
Ooh, that's smart. I have obviously my weekly show with you every Sunday at 11 a.m. Tuesdays is the Perspective Call-In show, which is 6:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And this week, my co-host will be Brainbug. And then Wednesday will be my, at least temporarily, my last episode of In Black and White. We are doing a political roundtable on why do the Republicans support Donald Trump. That'll be at 5 p.m. on youtube.com/YFNA news. I actually have a pretty light schedule this week. It's a little nice.
it's Halloween.
Yes. Is trick-or-treating closed? Like, is it state by state, or would you know what's going on with that?
All I know is that I drove around the town that I'm staying in, and I saw kids gathering in parking lots with like parents and stuff. And so I don't know. It seems like individual organizations seem to be doing it amongst themselves. I don't think that it would be allowed, but I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm curious. I got to look if it's happening in my area. Anyways, I do hope everyone today actually wishes me luck. I have been invited to sit down with another YouTuber. And he's Christian. He's got some extremist views, and I'm a little hesitant and nervous about this one, but I am bringing my own camera equipment, and I will be recording it myself. As I've heard, he has been someone who can edit or chop things up. So if I go through with this, I'm going to make sure I have all my own recording equipment, so I can make sure nothing I said gets taken out of context, or that I can show the video in its entirety.
I think you can do it. I think that you're being smart by protecting your bases, by preparing yourself, prep the person, record it. But I think as long as you do what you think is right and you're careful and you set the terms, I think you'll be fine. Good luck.
So too. And people in the audience, if there is a topic, if you haven't noticed, our trend is covering mental health, like mental health and pets, politics, religion, everything. So if there's a topic you want us to cover, especially because we didn't figure out a topic for next week before we went live, let us know. Yeah. I wish I would have thought of something beforehand.
I'm thinking mental health and holidays.
Ooh.
Because it'd be November 1st, the day, or it'd be the day before the election.
Election's November 3rd, so
we just did politics today, though.
Right. Mental health. Yeah, I don't know. But
I don't know. We'll figure it out.
No, yes, we will. Also, make sure you like and subscribe and share this video on your Twitter and Facebook if you could. If you like what we do, consider showing your support. There's a Patreon link in the description below for as little as $1 a month. And what we will be doing differently is a portion of the proceeds will be going to the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
Recovering from Religion.
Recovering from Religion. And then also we'll be finding ways to give that back, to a portion of it back to the audience as well, whether it be through giveaways or gift cards. So yeah, if you like what we do, click the Patreon.
Thanks, y'all.
That's all I got. I hope everyone has a safe week, and I hope everyone wears a mask.
Yes.
And go vote. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks.